Hello, everyone. Here we are with my friend Tania. I am Yulia Rudko, a yoga therapist and somatic educator. Today, we'll be exploring a topic of negative beliefs and their effects on our lives. And I would like Tania to introduce herself too, to start with.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm taniajmaven, a certified life and mindset coach. I'm also a hypnotherapist, and I do massage therapy, Reiki, reflexology, card readings. So really just love the whole realm of wellness and being able to use the different areas to bring to better our lives, to live a life that's more fulfilled, feels like we have more meaning, and live from that place, because I think that's what we're here to do, right?
Yeah, that's already right away. Your words are going into that. What do we believe? Even about that, what are we here for?
Yes.
We can, I guess, we can choose a belief, or we can take somebody's belief and run with it. And sometimes we might not even know that we've taken somebody's belief and we're living our lives guided by it. And of course, talking about negative beliefs, we can't not talk about empowering beliefs. So if you choose to decide that you can't achieve something in life, or you can't heal, you probably will create it. Or if you choose a belief that, yes, everything is possible, I can heal, I can learn things, or I can achieve this goal, your outcome will be different in life or in your actions. So how, Tania, do you see in your life those things playing out? Like, have you been noticing through life that you were guided more of the empowering beliefs or more of the negative beliefs? Or how this process, how even awareness about those beliefs came about?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that as you were saying that, because sometimes to go from like a negative belief to an empowering belief, there's like quite the bridge, right? So I feel like it's not something that can always happen just like, oh, I'm going to think positive and then that's going to be enough. So for myself, growing up, I grew up very religiously in a religious community. And so there was a lot of do's and don'ts, right? There was a lot of things that were right. There was a lot of things that were wrong. And those were the things you had to believe and on all that kind of thing. And I'm not like trying to diss if anybody has like religious beliefs or anything like that. I'm just saying how I grew up and how my experience was with it was that there was a lot of right and wrongs. And so that created a lot of belief systems for me. And even if we don't have religion, that's just how we grow up. So if it's okay, I'll just take a step back and just kind of say like how beliefs are formed, just really briefly. Is that all right?
Of course.
Okay. So for belief systems, like with working with hypnotherapy and mindset, of course, like that's something that I love looking at. This is like one of my favorite topics to talk about. And it's looking at the very beginning. So in the beginning, when we're born, we have, our environment around us, our main people around us, which are our parents, which is why in therapy, they always say, hey, how did your parents do things? And it's like, well, I don't want to blame my parents, or we want to blame them. But the truth is that part of the reason why we look at what our parents did is because they were our primary environment. And so they were our primary, who we looked up to, and we learned what they did. And as we work with that, so what happens is that information then goes from our conscious mind into our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is the part that just stores all of the information. So I like to think of it as like a, what do they call it? Like a filing cabinet. And every time we have a thought or an experience or a feeling, an emotion, all those kind of things, they get stored into this filing cabinet. And along with that, we give it a meaning along with what we're experiencing, right? So then, for example, with that, the meaning can be something that's powerful and empowering for us, or it can be something that after time, when we have a repeated experience, we give it a repeated meaning, that's where a belief starts to happen. So a belief doesn't happen just one time experience typically. Typically, it's where we have it happen multiple times and the meaning we start to attach to it. So I'm trying to talk to my mom. I'm a young child and I'm trying to talk to my mom. And my mom says, not right now. I start to think, well, maybe I'm not good enough. Right. And then something else happens. And, again, I start to give it that meaning of, well, I'm not good enough. And then, something else happens and it's like, well, obviously it's solid now. I'm not good enough. Right. And so these may be things that, maybe someone said to us, like, you're not good enough. Maybe somebody said, oh, like me growing up, my sister was like a really good singer, or she still is. And so I grew up thinking I don't have a very good voice. So I'm not good enough to sing, especially if my sister's around, and saying that, we sang a lot growing up, but there was this level of like, oh, I don't know if I should sing in front of people. I'm not good enough. Right. And so how many times do we think that, like, even just our own perception of like, oh, this singer is like Christina Aguilera, she can hold a note so well. I can't do that. So I'm not good enough. Right. And so we start to give these negative beliefs start to be planted because of our own lens. Meanwhile, my mom may think, you're great. And I just didn't have a moment to talk at that time. I needed to get something done. Right. And it wasn't that she didn't think I was good enough or worthy of her time. She just needed to get something done. But I took it potentially differently, or we as humans. Right. So these are just an example of where we start to create our negative beliefs. And so looking at that, it's so deeply embedded in us. In our last talk that we talked about, like, can we heal those deeply embedded things in order to move forward, right? So the answer to that is in our last call, last chat for that. But looking at specifically at this, so that I just wanted to touch base on like how our negative beliefs can start happening even from when we're young. Does that make sense to you?
Totally, yes.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that our conversations that we are doing are never scripted. We just pick a topic, and that topic is important to us, and we just discuss it. And there is a lot of times unlimited amount of kind of interesting stuff to look at that we have. And what I wanted to say while listening to you, I always learn something. And just because, you kind of live your life within yourself, it's kind of we narrow in and zooming in into ourselves. When we hear somebody else's story, I find it pulls you out of that internalizing, and you start seeing things or understand things in a different way. So all that you said made sense to me. Plus, when you talk about your experiences, it starts bringing me into kind of my experiences also in childhood. Like, oh, those things happened. And exactly, like when it's repeated, certain repeated action from parental figures, or it might be even not parental figures. I started thinking if there are maybe kids, our friends, can say something. And if we care about them and about their opinions, and in childhood or in teenage years, the opinions of others for some reason are very important, especially of our peers. So we take it in. And if someone, especially if someone will repeat a similar thing, then you take it in as if you are broken or something wrong with you, or that you can't do this or that. And I find in adulthood, we start changing a little bit in terms of taking in broader picture. Not always, and not for everyone. I'm not generalizing, but for my own self, I found that when I was a child or teenager, it was all focused on me, that I did not have ability to step out and realize that those actions or those words of people actually weren't even about me at all. Mm-hmm. A lot of times it was someone in a bad mood, someone is jealous, and they are troubled by their own stuff, but they taken it out on you, or projecting onto you. That happens a lot. Now I can not always again see when those things come at me. I can own up to what's mine, what's not, or I can create a boundary. As in those earlier ages, it was more like, it's all about me. Yeah.
Yeah. We become very reactive, right? And part of the reason I think for that is that we want to belong. So belonging is such a deep human need to belong and to be loved that when someone who we love says something that is potentially, we take it as hurtful, whether it was meant that way or not, that it's this sense of like, oh, well, we want to belong so badly, right? So then we sometimes will take on other people's thoughts or opinions or that kind of thing, but also realizing that they're just saying something out of their lens. Again, their lens might be different than ours. That doesn't mean, so when we look at belief systems, and I'm probably jumping ahead here a little bit, part of the way to switch that, which we can, again, talk about a little bit later, is looking at it as like, okay, well, that might be true for them, but is that really true for me, right?
That's a beautiful way to approach. I actually would like to take it into my life even now. That might be true for them. My own self, is that true? And maybe even looking like if you need to find evidence, if it's a negative belief or negative statement, would you even sometimes want to reinforce that belief? Like, I don't know, that's a tricky thing. So if someone says something negative about you, I'm not talking about denying, but would you want to take on something like you have an ugly voice or you don't sing well? Should I look for evidence for it and therefore not sing? You know, like if you're getting joy, for example, from singing, why would you even absorb that belief, right? But if, for example, someone would mention you were driving recklessly, like someone was driving with you, would I want to evaluate, maybe even ask for feedback, where did you notice I was reckless? Because that kind of statement I would like to evaluate, because, well, most of us do not want to hurt nor ourselves nor others. So in that instance, I might go and ask, like, where are examples, and see if there is evidence for that, and maybe evaluate within myself. But those things that, for example, like I said, singing or drawing, for example, if you love drawing and someone said you can't draw, would you drop it even though that's your calling, that's where you find joy? So
right. And I think that goes back to like just one incident or something, how we've perceived it, that I'm not a good drawer. Like that belief doesn't happen just once, right? It's when it's like repeated, or when we repeatedly through our own lens receive it that way, right? So sometimes it's directly someone saying you're not a very good artist, you know, and then other times it's just like we look at something and we start to think, I'm not very good at this, I'm not very good at that. And so it becomes, you know, that belief system through multiple experiences if we choose to allow it to be that way, right? So yeah, so it often is like, if I'm not good at drawing, is just like the higher level, but underneath it, it's like that belief of I'm not good enough, right? And so we start to try to give, and subconsciously, we're always looking for evidence anyways. So we're always giving everything, our mind wants to find evidence, whether it's positive or negative. And most of the time, because of how, you know, we have that flight or fight system, right, in us, we're looking for like, is this going to be harmful for me? Because, you know, back in the caveman days, as they always say, like you had to run from the, you know, saber-toothed tiger and to save your life. And so now we're still operating on those caveman type of programming, if you will, that says I have to be safe. And am I safe? And so we're looking always for evidence where we're not safe so we can stay safe, right? But then in saying that, we're also, with negative beliefs, we can stop ourselves from moving forward. We don't have to worry about the saber-toothed tiger anymore. Like, that is really what stops us. And so when we believe something in our subconscious, that is how we act in our conscious. So our body just follows what we think, right? So that's the important part of really being able to look at what are my belief systems, and are these belief systems actually serving me? Because if they're not, they're going to play out in all these different ways of like, oh, I'm going to stop myself from singing, even though it brings me joy. So like I said, I would think that I'm maybe not the greatest singer, but we would still sing all the time. If there was other people around, then maybe I wouldn't as, fully, right? And so it's something that, but at the end of the day, it's like, I enjoy it. I enjoy singing. I enjoy dancing. So let's just do it. I don't know how to organize dance to save my life, but I enjoy it. So I do it. Right. And so can I allow myself to have an experience and to give it a new evidence anyways, right?
It's such this topic is just so amazing, so much coming up for me. It's like, one is that I think and I observed that the beliefs or belief systems are hard to find, especially if you are not at a place where you like hit a limit and you're like, I need to change something is stopping me, and you don't know what, and you start looking and inquiring. Unless you're at that place, I find we just like operate on autopilot, because that subconscious is not something willful anymore. It's like a tape that plays out and you have no conscious control or power of. So that one thing is that I think a lot of us humans don't even have a clue what we are operating on. And then this conversation is bringing up this kind of, it's a new thing for me. Is there like a levels of beliefs that this one is not important, and if it's especially conscious and I make a decision, conscious decision, what I'll do with it, then it doesn't have so much power. Like, we might still, comparison, I'm not saying it's good for our mental health or for our actions, but it's a natural kind of thing that we do, like even as children, right? I'm comparing myself to my sister, she sings better. And are you comparing it because parental figures said it? Or did you decide it yourself somehow? Probably not. Then when we compare, for example, like, let's say Christina Aguilera, I know I can't sing like her. And when I consciously go into that, it becomes kind of this belief, or it's not even a belief, it becomes like it's a fact. But what will I do with it? Do I live my life feeling bad about myself? Or do I just sing and maybe I just am very happy that I am not on a stage? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of hard to explain that when you bring it up, and then you can almost like just decide what you do with it. You throw it away, you don't pay attention, maybe it's not important. So it's like almost like layers of importance too. Like, that's what showed up to me.
Yeah. So this is something that when I do belief work with my clients, we work with a lot. And so it's like, sometimes it's finding the root. So like I said, last time we talked about, do we need to find the root? And we both like came to the conclusion that sometimes we do. And so sometimes there can be trauma, or there can be this root cause. And it's just like, I'm always coming back to this. I'm always bumping against this. If that's you, then it's like, okay, maybe it's worth looking at. And you're absolutely right. It is hard to see because we work on autopilot so much from our subconscious mind. Our subconscious mind is just working off of the information we've always given it. So they actually say we have our core beliefs, values, and in like within the first 6 years of our life. Right. And after that, we're just working on autopilot from everything that we've learned. And yeah, like you said, particularly parents, those who are close to us, siblings, teachers, authority figures, maybe a preacher, that kind of thing. So we've taken those values and beliefs, and that's what we operate from. So when we want to look at the root cause, sometimes it does require some unwinding. Like when we talk about singing, since we're using that as an example, that's just a higher level belief. Right. But there's also this one quote that says, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if I think I'm not good at singing, I might think I'm really good at cooking, I don't know. I don't know if I personally think that for myself, but I do fine. Right. But nonetheless, just using that as an example, but there'll be ways that we stop ourselves in life, right, from moving forward because we have this belief system. So then it's looking back at, where did this actually originate from? And so you said earlier, like, I don't know if we give these beliefs to ourselves. Yes and no. So like growing up, like I said, our environment is such a important factor when it comes to limiting beliefs or creating any beliefs. And then the other aspect is the lens we look at it. So this is where you can have two siblings, and the one sibling will say, oh, life was like this, dad was like this, and mom was like this, and it wasn't really good. And the other sibling's like, what are you talking about? We had a great childhood, right? And they're like, are we even from the same, like, did you experience the same thing? And part of it is because of how our lens is. It's how we look at life, right? And how we choose to look at life. So the responsibility ultimately does come back to us, especially as adults. We can only use how we grew up. I'm going to use the word excuse here for a moment as an excuse for so long. If we want to make changes, we have to take responsibility for how we viewed things, right? And for how, even though, let's say, your childhood was crappy and all those things were absolutely 100% true with how your lens experienced it, whether it was true or not, that's how your body experienced it, right? At this moment, at this second of your life right now, you have the opportunity to say, but do I want to continue living this way? Do I want to continue with this lens? Do I want to continue with these limiting beliefs? As we talked last time, am I going to let this fear of climbing the mountain because I'm afraid of heights stop me from the things that I want to do? I had to make a decision. We have to make decisions. Do I want to continue, not singing my heart out? Right. And maybe I will be grateful I'm not doing it on stage. Maybe I will use other talents, on stage, like just speaking or whatever the case may be. Right. So that is something that we get to choose as adults. Yes, we were given a certain, we experience a certain life up to this moment, but from this moment we get to choose. And so that is where a lot of my clients come to this point. Most of us don't come in, like most of my clients don't come to me and say, I have so many limiting beliefs, I need you to help me. No, that's not how it shows up. They're like, I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I don't know which direction to take in life. I just feel unhappy, I have more anxiety, I'm having depression, and I don't know why, or I don't know how to change things, or my relationship's not good. Those are the things they come to me for. They never come to me for, like, I want to change my mindset and I want to change my belief system and I want to heal some trauma. No, never, right? But at the core of it, this is where we can look at what's really at the root of this, and we can start saying, okay, this is where some of this is from, and I have the power to change it if I so choose, if I allow myself to be open and aware and willing to do some of this work. And when I say work, it doesn't always have to be hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like I just had a whole rant here.
No, I love it. I'm just thinking, how a lot of us humans, and I was in that boat too, like when there are especially repetitive things happen, right, to us, we kind of feel like a victim of this harsh reality or this harsh life. That why is it always happening to me? Or, oh, not again. You know, like if, for example, for a while there, I'll use my example. I would bang into things and I was like wondering what's wrong with me? Like, why am I hitting all the corners, all the stuff? So you starting, it's almost like, you know, this belief that when you're special, even though it's not that positive or useful, but you're like special somehow, but still victimized. Or some people that are like, oh, I always attract, you know, if a lady will bad man or something that seem charming at first and then they become nasty, like, and that's a belief, and sometimes it does repeat in life, which is so interesting. It almost like as if our own belief attracts it. That attracts the event to kind of prove that what we're thinking is true. How do you think, like, is that, what's your opinion? Is it like we for real attract it, or is it the lenses with which we're looking?
Such a good question. Such a good question. Because I feel like, you know, there was a time where I felt like anytime anything good happened, something bad was going to follow. And time and time again, it would prove me right. My evidence would always show up, right? Something good happened. Yay, that's great. But I wouldn't even allow myself to get too excited because I knew something bad was going to happen. And one day I realized that I had this belief system of exactly that. And so I was like, no, this is not my reality anymore, right? And so then something good would happen, potentially something not great would happen after, but I didn't associate the two. It was just two separate incidents, right? So there I changed my mindset and I changed how I looked at things. Now I can't even tell you, I don't think bad things happen after something good happens. You know, I still do notice that sometimes I need to, or I want to celebrate the good things more, because I don't need to worry about something bad happening. And I don't think that it's going to happen that way. So I don't notice if that actually does happen anymore. So it's like, why not celebrate it fully? But I remember that being a very conscious choice. I was like, no longer am I thinking this way, you know? And so, and then in seeing that too, what is the bad thing, right? Like maybe it's just something just changed and it seems like in that moment something bad happened, but that's not, is it actually bad? What's bad? What's good? Right? So that's a whole nother conversation as well. But that's definitely one example. And another one I remember is like, I'm not lucky. Like my brother and sister and I, we all entered a raffle and my brother and sister won and I didn't. And I just created this belief of I'm not lucky. You know, everybody else wins something. I never win anything. I never win anything. And I'd always say that. And then one day, actually probably only a couple of years ago, like I had this belief for so long, like we were kids when we took our little money and put it in a raffle, right? And I was like, no, I am lucky. I'm open to receive. I am lucky. I win things. And I've started to win things. So there is that kind of that double side. One of them was like, I'm changing my mindset with it. And the other one is like, do I maybe attract more winnings now because I'm open to receiving that energetically, you know? Or before, if I did win something, would I maybe think, oh, great, now something's going to happen because something good happened. Although I don't remember like winning anything, but there was probably a lot of ways that I was lucky and I didn't even realize it or acknowledge it like I do now, right? So I think so much of it is our mindset, and changing our mindset can also help change our like negative beliefs.
So it's like filters, like mindset can be a beautiful filter, or it can be a negative filter that colors everything gray, right?
Yeah, I feel like it comes down to choice. What are you choosing to see?
And it's so hard, when you're in emotional state, because emotions guide us a lot. So when, for example, I remember something was happening. I think I locked myself out, plus I broke a plate or something. And I remember because I felt bad, I was spiraling into thought of oh, this is a bad day. And then I caught myself and I was like, no, this day has nothing to do with that. Your day is fine. These are not events that are predicting your whole day, or, right now I can cut off that thinking of this is gonna be my whole day like that. I find this requires a higher degree of awareness. So when I used to be, before more of the self-growth, that would be spiraling me into that thinking and maybe even creating beliefs, and I would have a bad day because I let these emotions create thoughts create emotions, and they just spiral you downward. Mm-hmm. And when you become more aware, you can catch yourself when you do that. Mm-hmm. And I find this so helpful that I can change my day, my mood very fast now. Just by like, oh, where are you going? You can substitute what you just made up in your head with a new one, better feeling one. Mm-hmm. Do you find that occurred in your life also?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I we'll talk about too, is like reframing, right? So, and sometimes like we need to there's like the victim part of us, right? That little girl inside, or little, boy inside that wants to say, no, but I am having a bad day, because again, we're operating from that 0 to 6 years of age when we're in that space. And so it's like, okay, yes, maybe my day has been bad up till this moment. I can take a breath, I can reset, and then choose a better thought again, And so if and this is where building the bridge comes in. It's like from the negative thought to the positive thought, we can pause, take a breath. I always find breath is like very cleansing, a really great way to reset your mind. There's like scientific proof, of course, as around, you can speak more to that if you like, around having 3 to 5 deep breaths in and out, how that can reset. And then if you're not ready to be in a positive state yet, that's okay. But what about a curious state? If we can be in a curious state of like, well, what would it look like if I just slow down for a moment? I don't have time. I need to be here. I'm already late. The mind wants to come back in, and it's like, okay, cool. If I'm already late, what's another 2 minutes, right? Right. And so you come back to this like curiosity place, like, well, what if I took one thing off my plate? What could it be today? Right. And so then we come into this place of curiosity. What if the possibilities? And when we come into that, we start to realize we can be a creator in our life, and we don't have to get so caught up in the emotions. But absolutely, I do agree that takes practice. It's a muscle, just like any other muscle in our body that we're working out. It takes practice to stop and say, okay, maybe I've had a crappy day. But does it have to end that way? Does the next 10 minutes have to be that way, right?
Mm-hmm. Also, I read it somewhere a long time ago, is to allow yourself, like you said, if there is that child that like, no, I really feel like victimized and I need to cry right now, feel that. Sometimes there is these emotions that need to be expressed and felt instead of pushed away. And I was reading is to give time. Like time yourself, like till 2:30, I'll be like crying and giving myself permission to feel as a victim, but only till 2:30. I haven't used that, but I was reading that was an effective one. Same one for worry. If you worry about something, instead of spinning in a worry all day and using up your energy, to create a time from 1 to 1:30, I'll worry and then let it go.
Absolutely. It's very powerful. Actually, I have used it, and I use it a lot in all different kinds of things. So it can be like, exactly like you said, like you give yourself that shitty 5 minutes. It's like, I'm in this place now. I've finally acknowledged where I am. I'm stopping myself and pausing. But now that I've paused, and I'm going to give myself that shitty 5 minutes, or, whatever, half an hour. I really suggest not to go more than an hour, like, because then we're just living in it, right? Because now we've had this, like, once you have awareness, like, then that's time to make the change, right? So yes, absolutely. I wouldn't say anything longer than 20, 30 minutes is usually good. And then I mean, there are occasional days where you're just like, I just need to feel this. And then you're tuning in and you're like, not to stay living here, but just to really get through it. Right. And so nonetheless, you have your shitty 5 minutes or whatever that is. But I use this also with procrastination. I know I need to do something for my business, for whatever, make calls to set up a dentist appointment. I'm like, I don't feel like it. Right? And so I use this with procrastination as well. It's like, okay, fine. You get 5 minutes, you get 10 minutes to just do nothing, scroll on Facebook, whatever. And then I'll set a timer. And when that timer goes off, you have to do it. Right. And so it's just the same idea. You can use it with so many things to empower your life and still, I don't know, give that little one inside of you that little pouty time of, I don't feel like doing this right now. Yeah.
And sometimes it won't even be that, just like a little pouty one. Sometimes, you bump into something very serious and big, and you actually need to process it through the body. Yeah. And again, the big thing is processing it through the body, not going into thought, because thought will feed the emotion, and you will not process, you'll just keep doing the loop. But I found when you pause and actually, like, what's needed right now, what's needed, what's going to come through. Absolutely. And right, it might be a sound, it might be writing, it might be dancing, it might be punching, it might be screaming and stomping your feet. So yeah, like, if you, like anyone who is listening, if you bump into something like this and there is a big charge in the body is felt, I would say it's better to go with that impulse. Of course, not in the damaging furniture or humans or animals. No, use a productive kind of way, like punching a pillow, or punching bag, or, well, stomping on the floor, I guess, is all right, or come out on the ground. Yeah, because it's not always that simple. So sometimes we can just flip a mindset, especially if there is not yet built up that muscle of awareness to snap out.
Absolutely. That reminds me of, like, we naturally, when we're triggered, and part of the reason we get triggered is because of our belief system, we think things are one way, and then something's bumping up against that, and that becomes a trigger, right? And so when we're triggered, we want to go into this flight, fight, or freeze response, and sometimes a combination of them, right? So if we could have that awareness, so this is going into, like, I don't know, like the solution portion a little bit of, like, when we have negative beliefs and we're coming up against some of these things that especially when it's involving emotion, we get this trigger. And so with the trigger, that flight, freeze, or fight response, I was reading once this post by, I believe it's Tania, the acupuncturist that we know. And she was saying to honor that, and to say, okay, right now, I just want to walk away from this conversation. Like, and so that's like the flight response of our trigger, right? So in that moment, you can then use that response, but use it in a healthy way. You can tell whoever you're having a conversation with, or whatever the case may be, I'm going for a walk, I'm going for a run. I need my shitty 5 minutes, right? And then coming back, then you can come back because you're now honoring that response that wants to come up, right? But doing it in a healthy way, not just driving off and not knowing where someone's going, storming out of the room, not as effective, but really just communicating, I just need my shitty 5 minutes or whatever. I'm going for a run, I'm going for a walk, I'm going, whatever the case would be. Maybe it's longer than 5 minutes. And then so that's the response for that one. The fight response, like you said, then it's like, okay, instead of physically harming someone, or you maybe have felt like, oh, I just need to punch someone, but you don't, right? And and that's trapped inside of you. So the same idea is like punching a pillow, going to a kickboxing class, whatever the case may be, that you can get that response out and still honor it. And then the freeze one, she was saying, be still. It's to say, again, I need I need 10 minutes, and be still, go meditate and just focus on your breath. Listen to something that calms you, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's like journaling, right? So that response needs something that's very soft and gentle. And that can really bring you back to, okay, what has been triggered here? And this is a whole different conversation, and I would love to have it too. And if anybody's interested in more about triggers, but what is the trigger here? But underneath that, what is the belief system that was triggered, right? The belief that was pushed. So if the belief by somebody, doing something or saying something, or we experience something through our lens of, this is triggering me now to feel like I'm not enough. And I bring up the I'm not enough top belief system because, Tony Robbins, he says the two main universal beliefs in the world is I'm not enough and I'm not lovable. So those are two huge belief systems that we all carry around with us. And, so it's so incredible how something can happen and it triggers that I'm not enoughness or I'm not lovable. And, and so then we respond in a way that's not always healthy. And it's the injured child, within us that is being triggered, right?
Yeah, I can see that, like with anything, with procrastination, that could be a belief that I'm not enough, that I won't do a good job, I won't succeed. So that might be what's underlying. And sometimes I think psyche knows that it's a huge deal and doesn't want to go there.
It goes back to that whole fear thing. It's like, let's stay safe. Let's not go there, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. Our beliefs, we all have belief systems, and we all have like possibly hundreds of different belief systems, and beliefs, that negative beliefs that can hold us back, right? So in saying that, what are some things that you use, Yulia, to help to overcome or change those mindsets, those negative beliefs that want to run rampant to keep us safe? They're always there to try to protect us, right? So that's the thing, is that they are trying to protect us. But what are some things that you use then for?
So like one bouncing ideas or talking with you, like when we get together and I bring something to the table, that different perspective or how you would see my situation a lot of times is quite different from how I see the situation. And that shows me the other possibility of either seeing or resolving. So finding a person that has high degree of awareness already, I would say that is needed probably, because a lot of times if you go to person who hadn't developed that, they probably will just emphasize what you're already struggling with and not actually find the other perspective or way out. Another thing I found is a very good one. I just fell in love with this tool, is Byron Katie's tool, The Work. And every time when I feel really like bumped against something, this asking, is it true? And why I took big sighs, because sometimes that desire to be right about something, even if it's not feeling good, is big. I don't know, our egos like being right. And so just like saying, okay, I see this desire of being right, but then what I am making right now in my head, that story or that belief, is it true? And when you start examining, is it true? Is it 100% true? You start finding cracks in that story or that belief. And that one I found just a lot of times dissolves by itself, but you can also ask yourself, what would you like to believe instead? And but it's already when it cracked, right? And then you or inviting, for example, maybe you you have some deity, some saint, or a person that either living or lived before, and you really respected their opinion, you can go into meditation and ask that person or those people how they perceive this situation or what they see. But it needs to be quieting down, being in meditative state to be able to hear those messages, how it is seen from other point of view, especially someone that is represents higher consciousness. So those would be good. And then also looking for evidence, really examining, like this belief that you have. Again, it's kind of, is it true? And then who is involved? What? How? Why? Kind of ask quite a bit of questions to see if it stands, that inquiry, that interrogation even. And if it doesn't stand it, if there is things that don't align with reality, it doesn't even you dismantle it by doing something, by just questioning this, it dismantles, it crumbles. And with that, you see that one, it crumbles, it's not aligned with reality, it's actually not true. And you can see, what would I like to believe instead? Or maybe even doesn't need to be believed, but just connect to factual evidence. What do you see in reality right now? So those just what coming up in this moment. They're probably more just, how sometimes mind later on, like, oh, I should have said that. But right now, that's what came up.
Yeah, and that totally is the case. It's like, oh, I have more to add. Part 2. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, is there's always more, right? I agree. I think perspective is such a huge thing. I believe that also being open to the fact that there can be more possibilities than what I'm seeing right now is, and it can be something when we want to be right, it's just like, nope, this is the only way. But when we can allow ourselves, even in those moments, to be open to a different possibility, be open to even how someone else sees it, but that doesn't mean it has to be our truth, but we can still be open to something else. I think that's really important, to come back to the piece when it comes to our own belief systems. Changing our negative belief systems, sometimes it really is helpful to work with someone who is trained in the area to do, like you said, have someone who is that higher consciousness, or just someone who's trained in that area to help guide you through, because we've never learned how to do this, and so you're not expected to know how to do that. That's the other thing, is like, give yourself a break. You were taught, you were never, so how you don't have these tools yet. So working with someone like myself or yourself or whoever else that someone resonates with, to help guide through this type of work is, I think, very helpful and very important. And also living a life where you, like a higher vibed life is what I've been calling it lately for myself, right? When we talk about the next level self stuff, it's like that mindset. If you can live a lifestyle that brings in more of a empowering mindset on the daily, you will naturally start to dissolve some of the negative beliefs that would be holding you down.
Yeah.
So if I'm getting up every morning and practicing different things like working out or going for a walk, because I know that they elevate how I feel, I'm going to feel stronger. I'm going to feel more fit. I'm going to feel healthier with eating the food I choose and that kind of thing. Then that in itself will say, yeah, you are enough. Are you crazy? Like, no, I don't want to say, are you crazy? But it's like, of course you're enough. Look, like you're stepping into this energy, right? So you're taking those daily practices. You're practicing even things like gratitude on the daily. Gratitude is a very high vibrational energy. So when we practice that, we invite that in. And so when if I invite that in and say, oh, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for this, it's very hard to be in an energy of lack, of I don't have enough, or, I'm not lovable, because all the evidence is showing me in gratitude that I actually am, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really just bringing in our mindset of daily practices that elevate who we are and who we want to become. So shifting.
Beautiful. Yeah. That I agree with you about the gratitude. If you only pay attention to how many blessings you have in your life, and you just will be amazed how much you can find. That's like, oh, this someone does something, someone smiled, this is, I'm taken care of. The farmer grew these vegetables for me, I'm taken care of and loved. My husband assembled the desk for me, he cares about me, I am loved. Like baker made the bread for me, I am loved. There is so many instances where you can find that you are loved and taken care of, only if you pay attention and look at it. And it's not hard.
Yeah, because our mind is always looking for evidence, so we get to give it the evidence that we want. We can either look at that, or we can look at the fact like, no, things are hard right now, I don't have, like, not sure if I'm gonna have a job, I'm not sure if I'm getting money, like all these kind of things. And if we start to have the negative beliefs of it, there's not enough, like it's, I'm not enough, and all these kind of things. But when we look at all the things that we're grateful for, it just shows us how abundant we truly are, and it does raise our vibration. And then from that place we can create anything. And that's where I think it's so beautiful that when we get into this mind space, we can actively create our life. Some people call it manifesting. I have been having some thoughts about what that looks like. It's like, are we truly manifesting? Yes, on some level, I think we are, but we're actively creating our life. We're not just sitting back and saying, okay, universe, I want this, bring it to me. Right. And again, that's a whole nother topic, which I would love to have, but, conversation. But yeah, so it's like actively creating our life by the daily choices that we make, stopping that monkey mind in that moment of I'm having a bad day, and saying, actually, maybe I've had a shit day up until now, but now I get to choose how I want the rest of the day to look.
I get to choose.
And that's actively creating your life. That's actively looking at the belief systems and saying, is this actually going to run me?
And take an active role. And I agree with you about working with people that either trained or more aware. That propelled me a lot in my life. Like without that assistance in earlier years, I wouldn't have developed even the skill of becoming aware and looking at it, even myself becoming aware. So that's a big piece I find. Thank you for mentioning it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You having a mentor or a coach or, something along the lines of that, because our friends and family typically will tell us what we want to hear.
Oh, there is that pattern, right? That gets triggered. Maybe there is that pattern of like grooves, worn out grooves. And when it's worn out grooves, you can't come out of, like, you can't see otherwise. So it would be better to step out of those grooves to talk to someone else.
Exactly. And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, I think we've been conditioned as well. Like, in order to support someone, we need to be there for them. We need to agree with them. We need to hold their hand, and realizing that support actually doesn't always look like that, right? And when you work with a coach or a mentor or something like that, the process will be gentle, but it can be something where it's like, they'll ask questions back, and you'll get a different, all of a sudden, like you said, you'll start asking yourself, is this true? Right. And you'll have to start to get different perspectives and different lenses. Right. So, or if you have someone in your life who doesn't always think the same way you do, and they're brave enough to say that, looking at that and saying, is there maybe some truth in this for me? Is there something that, does resonate? So, yeah. And that's not always going to, I definitely know there's people in my life where I'm just like, that's cool that you think that way. It's just not for me. Right. And so, and there's other people in my life where they think differently and they express it. And I really appreciate it and value it, because I can sink into this feeling of like, is there something here true for me? And I think whatever that person is on the other side, it really does come back to me. It's like, is this something that could be a different perspective, right?
Well, my dear, I don't want it to be like way longer, because sometimes people have hard time finding time for.
We'll wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
So, do you want to say where people can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Instagram, it's Tania, or at taniajmaven. Tania is Tania, J Maven. And on Facebook is the same, actually. And I also have a Facebook group. That's a private Facebook group. That's the Maven's Mindset Corner. And other than that, this is my website, taniajmaven.com. If you want to send me an email, it's hello@taniajmaven.com. So it's all pretty streamlined. So absolutely, we can also add that in the little notes as well. In the show
Yeah.
Yeah. How about for
And I am Yulia Rudko, and my website is www.IAmYuliaRudko.com. So easy. And on Facebook and Instagram, it's IAmYuliaRudko. So that's the handles. So very easy also to find. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Like I said, I could talk about belief systems all day long. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that everyone gets a lot of value out of this and that they had some takeaways. If you have any questions, obviously you can reach out to either myself or Yulia. And if you have any topics that you want us to talk about next, let us know. Like Yulia said, This is all very unscripted, partially because we believe we could do it unscripted. And that's where the wisdom is going to come from. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye.